The wind moved through the grass like it was searching for something it had forgotten. Long blades, brittle and sunburnt, bent softly under its passing, not wild, not fierce, just steady, like a memory that refused to die. A wagon creaked. Along the dirt road, its wheels coughing through the dust. Inside sat two children, pressed shoulder to shoulder beneath a threadbare blanket that smelled of firewood and rainstorms long past. The boy kept watch through the gaps in the canvas flap. The girl chewed a strand of hair, too tired to ask where they were going, up front. The woman held the reins, though there weren't horses anymore, only a tired old mule with knees that wobbled on the slightest slope. Her hands were raw, blistered from rope and sun, and her face bore the kind of silence that didn't come from peace. A silence born of trying to hold everything together without letting the children see her fall apart. They passed a dry well. An empty post office, a saloon with its porch collapsed like a drunk who never made it home. The town was there, but not alive, just bones. Even the crows didn't bother circling anymore. The woman stopped the wagon near a church whose bell hadn't rung in years. She stepped down slowly, stretching a spine stiff from too many nights without sleep. Her son jumped down after her, offering a hand she didn't need but took anyway. The girl waited for her mother's nod before climbing out. They stood for a while, just breathing in the stillness. There wasn't much else to do, she asked a stable hand, a boy no older than 15 with straw in his hair, if he'd ever heard of a man who once owned land north of the ridge, a man who rode alone, who fought in a war, maybe. Who once told a drunk in a tavern, if anything happens, go to him. The stable boy didn't say anything at first, just looked at her. Then he nodded toward the hills, where the land folded upward like a shrugging shoulder. They call him the Baron, he said. That night, the woman and her children laid out blankets on the church steps. No one offered them a room, but no one pushed them away either. That was the kind of town it was. The boy curled against her side, fingers wrapped in the hem of her coat. The girl stayed awake longer, staring up at the sky with wide, wondering eyes. "Mama?" she whispered. The woman turned, brushing a thumb over her daughter's cheek. "Will the man be kind?" There was a long pause. "I don't know," she said, "but I hope so." The morning came without fanfare. Just pale sun and wind that carried the scent of old wood and morning dust. The woman tied her hair back with a ribbon that used to be white. The boy laced his boots slowly, carefully, as if dressing for something sacred. The girl found a dried daisy between the wagon boards and tucked it behind her ear. Together they walked up the hill, where the grass gave way to gravel and the air turned quieter. The house waited there, tucked behind wrought iron gates and a garden that had forgotten what color was. Vines curled like old hands across the walls. Shutters hung crooked, and a porch swing moved gently in the wind, though no one had sat on it in years. They stood at the gate for a moment. The boy touched the metal latch, then looked up at his mother. She nodded. They walked the path, 3 shadows stretching long across the gravel. At the door, the woman lifted her hand. She knocked once, waited, knocked again. The wind paused. Then, from deep inside, the sound of something, not footsteps exactly, more like the sigh of an old floor remembering how to carry weight. The door opened slow, creaking as if it had forgotten how. And there he stood, a man in his twilight years, though he stood like someone who still remembered how to draw a line in the sand. His hair was silver, not from age alone but from solitude. His eyes were dark, not cruel, just emptied out. Like he'd poured everything into something long ago and never refilled. He looked at the woman, then the children, then back again. He said nothing. The boy stepped forward, fists balled at his sides, chest rising like he was trying to be bigger than he was. "He left us, sir. Mama said you might help." It came out small but sharp, a blade of truth wrapped. In a child's voice, the man stared at the boy for a long while. His lips parted, closed, then opened again, not to speak, just to breathe. Like he'd been holding it for a decade. He looked at the woman again. Her eyes didn't plead. They waited. Then slowly, almost like it hurt, he stepped aside. "You're home," he said, and something about the way he said it made the girl reach for her mother's hand, like he wasn't giving them shelter. He was receiving something he'd been waiting for, not guests, not strangers, something older than both, like maybe he'd built that house long ago, knowing one day someone would arrive, someone who would knock, and he would finally answer. The house did not welcome them, not at first. It creaked and sighed with old loneliness, the kind that seeps into the beams of a place when no laughter has lived in its halls for too long. The servant quarters smelled of cedar and dust, their walls still dressed in fading wallpaper that once bore flowers but now only shadows. The children took to it quickly, children always do. The girl traced her finger over the window panes and said the light made the dust look like dancing stars. The boy found a slingshot in a drawer and called it treasure. The woman made no complaint. She unpacked their few belongings with the same reverence one might lay out prayer cloths, slowly, with folded corners and careful hands. She found a pan in the corner hearth, black with time, and scrubbed it clean before sunset. The Baron did not dine with them. He did not speak more than a few words. He wandered the grounds at dusk like a ghost that didn't know it had died, always with his back to the house and his face to the wind. He moved like someone listening for footsteps that would never return. Nights found him asleep in a worn chair by the fire, chin to his chest, hands folded, not resting, just paused. The girl, curious and quiet, crept into the library one day. The books were old but well kept, and she liked the smell of leather and paper. Tucked between two volumes, she found a photograph. A woman stood beneath a tall pine, one boot resting on a rock, her hat tilted back to reveal eyes that dared the world to blink first. Her smile was small but defiant, the kind that said, "I know what I'm worth, and I'm not afraid to remind you." The girl turned it toward the light. The Baron was there in an instant, his hand closing around the photo before she could speak, not with fury, but with trembling fingers that held it like a relic. He didn't scold her. Didn't speak? He just walked away, cradling the photo against his chest like a wound reopened. After that, he stayed farther from them, but they felt his presence in small things. The fence along the pasture, once bowed and broken, stood straight the next morning. A basket of bread, still warm, appeared on their steps, wrapped in a cloth the color of ash. The boy's wooden horse, broken from travel, sat mended and painted on the porch rail one afternoon, no explanation offered. The woman watched all this with quiet eyes. She did not thank him aloud, nor ask anything of him. She just began working. She cleared weeds from the front path, polished the brass doorknobs until they shone like coins. She trimmed the dead roses and tied the living ones to stakes with twine made from her apron strings. She dusted each windowsill as if she were waking the house gently from sleep. She didn't ask permission. She just gave kindness without ceremony. One night the boy's breath grew shallow. Fever took him like fire takes dry grass. The woman sat beside him with a damp cloth and murmured old songs, but fear grew in her chest like ice. In desperation, she rose and climbed the stairs. Each step a swallowed cry. She knocked. The Baron opened the door slowly, robe hanging loose around his shoulders. His eyes registered the terror in hers before she spoke a word. He followed her down without question. In the dim room, he bent and lifted the boy as if he weighed nothing, carried him to the fire like an offering. He wrapped a quilt around him and whispered soft words, not in English, not in any tongue she knew. The language of old lullabies, a mother tongue. The boy, drenched in sweat, quieted slowly under that voice. The woman stood in the shadow of the doorway and watched him rock the boy as if he had always been his. He didn't know she was watching. The fever broke by dawn. The boy slept like he had surrendered to peace. The next day the Baron returned to his chair. But now, when the children passed by, he didn't look away. The woman passed him in the hall once and said gently, "I washed the red curtains. They catch the sun better now." He nodded after a moment. Those were hers, nothing more. That became their rhythm. She would say something. He would offer a piece of a puzzle he hadn't touched in years. Once he mentioned the war. "It didn't end," he said. "Not really, just moved inside me. Made a home in my chest." She replied without lifting her eyes, "Mine too." Only mine didn't wear uniforms. Mine came with charm and promises. That was how they spoke, like two people airing wounds beside each other, not to show them off, just so they didn't rot alone. One evening, the light turned gold as if heaven had cracked open for a moment. He asked her to walk with him too. The edge of the property, where the grass dipped down and the land stretched quiet and wide, they stood there, looking at nothing in particular. Just breathing the same air. He said, "You remind me of someone I never got to grow old with." She didn't ask who. She didn't reach for him. She simply said, "Maybe I remind you of the part of her that stayed." He didn't smile. But his eyes softened, just a fraction. They didn't touch, but when they turned to walk back, their footsteps fell in rhythm. And that was enough. The days turned softer. The silence between them no longer felt like distance. It felt like space for breath, for healing. The Baron still walked at dusk, but now the girl walked with him, her tiny hand wrapped around two of his fingers. The boy followed behind with questions about birds and stars and what the wind was saying when it pushed the grass like that. The woman tended the roses, now green again, their buds blushing pink along the stems. She hummed while she worked. The kind of hum that only comes when sorrow loosens its grip. One afternoon, as rain tapped soft against the windows, she found the Baron in the old smoking room, polishing the butt of a rifle that hadn't fired in years. She sat across from him and spoke into the quiet like someone breaking ground. "He's not dead." The Baron looked up slowly. "The children's father," she said. "He just rode off one morning. Said he was going to find work. Said he'd come back with enough gold to build us a house with glass windows and piano keys." I watched him disappear between the trees. Never saw him again. She folded her hands in her lap. "He left more debt than promises. Some men came with knives. Some came with papers. None came with mercy." The Baron listened, face unreadable. He held the rifle still in his lap like it might answer for him. "I never hated him," she said. Softly, "Not then. I kept thinking maybe I broke something in him, that maybe if I had smiled more, asked for less." The Baron's voice, when it came, was quiet but clear. "What was his name?" She said it. And the sound of it changed the room. The Baron's jaw worked once, twice, before his lips parted. "I knew him." A silence heavier than grief followed. "We rode together," he said. "Same company, same hell. He was the kind of man who made you laugh while the sky burned. Brave, reckless, loyal. Until it cost him something." He stood, paced slowly to the hearth. "We both loved her. The woman in the photograph, she chose me. At least I thought she did." He turned back. "He took her from me, not by force. Not with lies, just waited until I was gone, then slipped. And where I'd left the door open, the woman nodded once. I always felt that. Felt like he was chasing something he'd already broken." The Baron sighed, deep and old. "I could have hated you for what you reminded me of, but I don't. I see you now, not her." The storm passed by morning dot, but something deeper stirred by dusk. The man came back. He rode in like wind, through brittle grass, fast, thoughtless, grinning. His coat was torn and stained with years. His eyes carried no regret, just exhaustion and liquor and the old arrogance of someone who believed absence could be forgiven. If enough time passed, he dismounted like he owned the place. Dot saw the children. He stared a second, then smirked. "They've grown," he said. The woman stepped forward. Her voice was calm. "Colder than the wind. You taught me how to survive," she said. "He taught me how to live. That was all." The man laughed, a dry bark. "You always were good with words." She didn't answer, just turned and walked inside. The Baron stood on the porch, arms crossed, a shadow across his face. The man met his eyes, held them, then dropped his gaze like someone remembering why he lost the last fight. He didn't stay. By nightfall, he was gone, and the stars came out like a chorus of small lanterns. She couldn't sleep. Her heart was too loud. So she wandered. Found the Baron in his study, a cup of untouched tea at his elbow. He stared out the window like someone waiting for the dark to answer. "You don't owe me anything," she said. He turned and there was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before. Not sadness, Not pity. Depth. You're wrong, he said. You and those children. You saved me. She stood still for a breath, then she crossed the room. Her hand found his, rough, worn, but warm. And he didn't let go. That night, the wind changed. It no longer whispered across the roof, but growled low through the chimney. The shutters clattered softly like teeth chattering in sleep. The woman rose first. Something had pulled her from rest. Not a sound, not a voice, just absence. She went to the children's room. The girl was curled under quilts, dreaming, cheeks pink, but the boy's bed was empty. The door to the yard stood open, swaying. Gently, a lantern flame leapt to life. Her voice cracked the air, the boy's name, once. Twice. No answer. Footprints led away from the house. Small, bare, fast. The Baron was at her side before she called. He saw the tracks, he saw the open barn. He saw what was missing, the rifle, the silver. The good horse. He came back, the Baron said, more to the wind than to her. The boy must have seen him. The hills swallowed sound as the storm approached. Slow, like a beast with no eyes but teeth wide open. The woman ran, skirts catching on thornbrush, her feet bare, bleeding. The Baron followed on the second horse, lantern in hand, jaw clenched like a fist in prayer. They searched for what felt like hours. Thunder began to roll. Then, near the creek bed, they found him. The boy sat beneath a dead log, arms around his. Knees shivering but whole. His eyes were wide, lips blue. When he saw them, he didn't cry, just whispered, "He had your gun." The Baron dismounted fast, lifted the boy into his arms like he weighed nothing, cradled him against his chest and whispered something into his hair, maybe a prayer, maybe a promise. They turned to leave, and there he was, the man, dripping wet, the rifle slung lazy across one shoulder. His face twisted in something that used to be confidence. He raised the gun, not pointed, not steady, just held, like a drunk clings to old anger. "I need the horse," he said. The Baron didn't flinch, didn't shift the boy in his arms. "You left your own blood in the dark," he said. "You walk away now, or you answer to every mile of pain you've ever planted." Rain began to fall. The woman stood beside him now, shoulders square, eyes quiet but burning. She said nothing, but the Baron could feel her presence, solid, unshaken, like a bell that refused to ring for the wrong hand. The man hesitated. His fingers curled, then loosened, the rifle lowered. He stepped backward, then again, then turned and disappeared. Into the storm. They didn't speak on the ride back, but the boy, held tight in his arms, whispered once, "He's not coming back, is he?" "No," said the Baron, "but we are." At the house, the girl met them at the door, blankets ready, eyes red from waiting. The fire roared in the hearth. The boy was wrapped in quilts and held close. The woman dried his hair with trembling hands. The Baron sat beside him, one hand resting firm on his shoulder, and then, it happened, the woman took the Baron's other hand, and he smiled, not the faint, polite kind, but something bigger, something old, now reborn, like dawn after a bitter winter. They didn't speak of love, they lived it. Love in the way he checked the children's shoes for stones before every walk. Love in the way she made the soup just the way he liked it, even when he hadn't told her. Love in the way the girl fell asleep on his lap, trusting his heartbeat more than a lullaby. The house changed, its silence softened, laughter echoed in the halls, boots thudded on clean wooden floors. The curtains danced. In open windows, flowers bloomed again beside the rusted gate. The woman sang while hanging laundry. The boy carved toys from driftwood. The girl chased chickens and butterflies through the tall grass. And the Baron, once a man made of stone and smoke, planted trees along the fence line, one by one. Steady hands. A quiet joy. He had a little girl on his shoulders now, arms out like wings, hair tangled with wind. And as the sun rose behind the house, long and gold and kind, the world felt like it had been forgiven, if you've ever been left behind. If, you've ever stood at a door with nothing but hope in your hands. If you've ever wondered whether someone, anyone, might say, "You matter, come in." Then remember this: sometimes the kindest souls are the ones who never left their porch. Just waited in silence, hoping someone would ask for help, not out of duty, but out of love aching to be given. And when they opened that door, "You're not a burden, you're home," the end.